Welcome back to our channel. There was something hypnotic about the way sunlight filtered through the dusty blinds of an attic in a quiet suburb outside of Omaha, Nebraska. The space was cluttered with cardboard boxes, old furniture, long-forgotten toys, and bins of keepsakes that had passed through generations without ever being thrown away. For Amanda Crawford, it was the kind of Saturday afternoon that promised nostalgia and maybe, just maybe, discovery. She hadn't been up in the attic for years. But now that her father had passed, it was her responsibility to sort through everything, piece by piece, and figure out what to keep, what to donate, and what to toss. The air was thick and warm, filled with the scent of aged wood and newsprint, and as Amanda sifted through a weathered trunk marked Dad's desk, she came across a box she didn't recognize. It was shoe-sized, wrapped with twine, and labeled simply, "Since 1980s and 1990s." She opened the lid and found rows of small coin flips, those square plastic and cardboard holders, with 1 penny sealed inside each. Her father had been a school teacher, not a collector in any formal sense. But he had always told her, growing up, that you should never overlook change. The rarest treasures, he'd say, are the ones hiding in plain sight. Amanda thumbed through the coins slowly. Most were ordinary. Well-kept, even carefully labeled, but ordinary. Until she reached one flip marked 1998, look closely. The note was handwritten, slightly faded, as if it had been sitting untouched for years. She held it up and examined the coin. A typical Lincoln cent at first glance, copper-plated zinc, just like every other post-1982 penny. The obverse featured Lincoln's right-facing profile, "In God We Trust," stretched along the upper rim, Liberty on the left, and the date 1998 to the right. But Amanda noticed something strange when she tilted the coin just slightly under the slanting light. The reverse, which should have shown the Lincoln Memorial, instead revealed something more subtle. Something off there. Behind the memorial was a faint outline. A shape. A second silhouette that should not be there. It was a doubled die, the famed white AM variety. For most people, the space between the letters A and M and the word America on the reverse of a Lincoln cent would be an afterthought, nothing more than a typographical detail. But for numismatists, especially those familiar with the late 1990s Lincoln cent anomalies, that space meant everything. Between 1998 and 2000, a small number of Lincoln cents were mistakenly struck using reverse dies intended for proof coins. These dies had a wider spacing between the A and the M in America, a feature only meant for the specially minted proof coins struck in San Francisco. But somehow, those dies had been used on a small batch of regular circulation coins, like this one from 1998. Amanda didn't know the technical specifics. But she knew enough to call someone who did. She took the coin to a local dealer in Lincoln, the city, not the man, who had a magnifier, a catalog, and a look of astonishment that only deepened the longer he stared at the penny. He pulled out reference books. Comparison images. He checked, rechecked, and finally stepped back from the desk with a long, slow breath. "You've got something here," he said. "Something big." He explained the rarity. That fewer than a few hundred 1998 white AM Lincoln cents had been found in circulation. That even fewer existed in high-grade condition. That most had long disappeared into private collections, with only the sharpest, clearest examples bringing real value. He recommended sending it for grading immediately. Amanda followed his advice. She researched coin grading, chose one of the top-tier services, and sent the coin off with careful packaging and a whisper of hope. Weeks passed, and the suspense grew heavier with each day. When the package finally returned, her hands trembled as she sliced through the tape. Inside was the coin, now encased in hard plastic, bearing the official label 1998 1C White AMFS 901, MS68 RD Mint State 68. Red. An almost flawless example, with brilliant luster, no contact marks, and perfectly preserved surfaces. In the world of coin grading, anything over MS65 was desirable. MS68 was exceptional. Practically unheard of for a coin pulled from circulation, let alone stored for over 2 decades in an attic shoebox. News of the discovery began to ripple outward. A 1998 white AM in such pristine condition? Collectors took notice. Dealers made inquiries. Coin forums lit up with speculation. How many others could be out there? How had this one remained hidden for so long? Theories flew. Some claimed rogue mint employees had reused old dies. Others believed it was an overlooked batch that had been quickly pulled from distribution. No one knew for sure. What they did know was that this particular penny, this slim, copper-plated disc struck in a forgettable year at the turn of the millennium, had become a relic of error, luck, and time. It represented a moment in numismatic history when the ordinary became extraordinary. When something so small, so insignificant in daily life, turned out to be a key to mystery. And for Amanda, it became a final gift from her father, a man who had always believed in finding wonder in the overlooked. She eventually agreed to sell the coin. Not out of greed, but because she wanted others to understand its story. To show that the smallest things we hold on to, whether a childhood memory or a single cent, can have value far beyond their weight. The sale happened quietly, brokered through a private auction, and when it concluded, Amanda sat in stunned silence at the final figure, the 1998 USA 1-cent penny, with its unexpected wide AM variety in near-perfect condition, sold $4.118,000. Because sometimes, when the world isn't watching, a forgotten coin left in a box for 20 years turns out to be priceless. The quiet rhythm of life in Bozeman, Montana, has a way of masking the extraordinary. It's the kind of town where folks greet each other by name at the post office and snow shovels lean permanently against front porches for half the year. For 38-year-old Taylor Dunning, a part-time history teacher and full-time dad, life moved with the gentle predictability of seasons. But it was in that unhurried pace that something remarkable was about to unfold, something small, circular, copper-colored, and worth more than most houses on his block. It started in the least likely of places, a local farmer's market. Taylor had taken his daughter Maya out on a Saturday morning to let her run wild between stalls of wildflower honey, handmade soap, and organic apples. At one of the food stands, Maya spotted a tin box labeled "Take a penny, leave a penny." It was dented and faded, filled with a haphazard pile of change. Maya, curious as ever, reached in and pulled out a few coins, fascinated not by their value but by the designs. One coin caught Taylor's eye, a dull penny with an unusually glossy surface, even beneath layers of grime. He slipped it into his pocket, more out of habit than curiosity. Taylor had grown up collecting coins with his grandfather, who always said that a real collector doesn't find treasure, treasure finds them. Later that evening, after Maya had gone to sleep and the last light of the Montana sunset had dipped behind the hills, Taylor sat at the dining table with a lamp, a loupe, and that single, unassuming penny. It was dated 2005, no mint mark, which meant it came from the Philadelphia Mint. At first glance, everything seemed ordinary. The front bore the standard image of Abraham Lincoln, still enduring in silent profile after nearly a century. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stood stoically. But something felt off. The coin's luster shimmered unnaturally, like a proof coin, not something meant for circulation. And then, there was the rim. Perfectly struck, clean edges. Too clean. Taylor turned to his old coin books. He compared photos, checked weights, studied minting errors. The more he looked, the more intrigued he became. The obverse, Lincoln's face, the date, and the mottos all appeared slightly bolder than usual, with razor-sharp definition. It didn't make sense. No circulated coin from 2005 should have survived 2 decades with such crisp detail. He turned to the reverse again. That's when he noticed the letters in United States of America. Something was wrong. The tops of the T and E seemed to shadow themselves ever so slightly. At 10x magnification, he could see it doubling. He froze. Taylor knew that doubled dies in modern coins were rare, but they happened. In fact, 2005 was known among numismatists for a few oddities. But this was different. This wasn't machine doubling. The split serifs, the notched corners, the actual overlapping impressions, all signs pointed to a true double die outburst. He reached out to a friend, an online coin forum moderator known as Copper Joe. After uploading high-res photos and sharing measurements, Joe's reaction was immediate and breathless. "You have a unicorn," he wrote. "A 2005 DDO that no one has publicly documented. Get that coin slab ASAP." Taylor, ever the cautious skeptic, still wasn't sure. He submitted the coin to a top-tier grading service under an express tier. The weeks that followed were pure agony. He checked the tracking number twice a day. He barely touched his teaching prep. And then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, the package arrived. His hands trembled as he opened the padded envelope. The coin was now sealed in its hard plastic case, like a sacred artifact. The label read 2005 1C double die obverse MS69 RD. He read it again. MS69. A hair's breadth from perfect. The coin had been struck with nearly flawless precision, the die error clear, the surfaces unblemished. It was a modern miracle in copper-plated zinc. The online numismatic community erupted when Taylor posted the certification. Experts debated the cause, questioned how such a coin could have slipped past modern quality control. Some speculated it was a single die pair that was caught early. Others believed a rogue die may have been mistakenly reused from proof production. No consensus was ever reached, but there was no doubt about its value. Whispers turned to offers. First a few thousand. Then tens of thousands. Then came the private message from a collector whose vault held nearly every doubled die sent from the last 50 years, except this one. A one-of-a-kind, high-grade anomaly from a year that had largely been overlooked. Taylor hesitated. This coin was history. His history. But he also knew that moments like these don't come twice. He negotiated, carefully, respectfully, and when the deal was done, he sat in stunned silence. That 1 penny, rescued from a take-a-penny tray by a curious 5-year-old, was now worth more than a lifetime of teaching salaries. The 2005 USA 1-cent penny, bearing a rare doubled die obverse and preserved in near-perfect condition, had been sold for $105,000. Because sometimes, the smallest coins carry the loudest echoes of history and the greatest surprises of all. The spring air in Asheville, North Carolina, carried the scent of blooming dogwoods and the buzz of weekend yard sales. On any given Saturday morning, neighborhood sidewalks became makeshift marketplaces, tables stacked with old books, cracked lamps, vinyl records, and cardboard boxes filled with forgotten treasures. For 61-year-old Nora Belmont, a retired postal worker with an eye for the peculiar, these little weekend excursions were more than just a pastime. They were a treasure hunt. She wasn't looking for antiques or furniture. Nora had a different passion. Coins. Not high-end certified slabs or auction house rarities. She hunted in coin jars, in mason jars, in cigar tins. For her, the joy was in finding what others had overlooked. She once found a steel penny from 1943 rusting in a coffee can. Another time, a 1970 small date Lincoln cent in a child's piggy bank. That particular Saturday morning, she stopped at a house with a modest display. A few gardening tools, a stack of faded board games, and a table with a rusted cash box full of loose change. The sign read, "All coins, 10 cents each." Nora smiled. She asked the homeowner if she could take her time, and when they nodded, she began digging. Most of the coins were dimes and quarters, the occasional foreign piece. But then she noticed a penny that gleamed differently. A little too well preserved. It sat near the bottom, partially hidden under a pile of nickels. She plucked it out and held it to the light. 2006. Numismatics looked brand new. Not in a freshly minted way, but in a way that made her pause. The luster wasn't just shine, it was a mirror-like reflection, like the surface of a calm lake at dawn. She flipped it over, noting the reverse, Lincoln Memorial, but something about it made her pause again. The letters looked thicker. Slightly doubled. Especially the word Liberty. The vertical stroke of the B had a shadow. A second impression, Nora's heart skipped. Could it be? She paid her dime and pocketed the coin. When she returned home, she turned to her magnifier and coin light. At higher magnification, the doubling was undeniable. The word trust also showed the same doubling, particularly in the T and R. The date 2006 looked suspiciously doubled. She pulled out her references. Searched online forums. Cross-referenced coin varieties. And then she stumbled upon a mention, one barely whispered in collector circles. A known but ultra-rare 2006 doubled die obverse Lincoln cent. Most believed the error had been caught quickly. Only a handful had ever surfaced, and none had been confirmed in higher grades. Nora's hands trembled. She knew what she had. With care, she packaged the coin and submitted it to a grading service, requesting expedited processing. The weeks that followed were filled with anxious checking. Every day the mailman didn't deliver the return package was another day of limbo. But then finally, it arrived. The slab inside bore the words 2006 1C double die obverse MS68 RD MS68. Red. Perfect surfaces. Strong strike. A unicorn among modern coins. Experts had theorized that most of the few double die 2006 cents were released in error and quickly removed. How one had survived in pristine condition, untouched for so many years, was beyond explanation. She posted a photo on a well-known online coin forum. The response was immediate, "No way. That's the highest I've seen. This is the one we've been waiting for." Within a week, collectors and dealers reached out. Offers trickled in. Then poured in. What began as small 4-figure offers soon reached 5. A renowned numismatist from California contacted her directly, expressing deep interest. "We've cataloged every 2006 DDO known so far," he said. "Yours may be the finest example we've seen." Nora didn't rush. She spoke to collectors, studied similar sales, contacted an attorney. And when she finally agreed to sell, it wasn't just for the money. It was for the legacy of the coin, a place in the annals of modern American numismatics. The coin changed hands privately, away from the glare of headlines and auction hammers. Nora took the money, invested most of it, and used the rest to fund coin collecting workshops for kids at the local library. She believed that magic lives in the small things. If you're willing to look close enough at the 2006 USA 1-cent penny, with its rare double die obverse and flawless condition, sold $4.102000. Because in the tiniest corners of the everyday world, hidden beneath piles of loose change and dust, history still waits to be found, 1 cent at a time. Elias had always believed in the power of the small things. In the army, it was the way he triple-checked every bolt and connection in a Humvee engine that saved lives. At home, it was how he could hear a loose screw in a washing machine just by the sound of the spin cycle. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words were chosen like fine tools, precise, necessary, and durable. His coin collection wasn't organized by rarity or value. It wasn't even about filling every slot in a collector's book. He arranged his coins by story. There was the penny with a bullet scratch he found near a veteran's memorial. A tarnished 1946 dime pulled from a hollow tree during a storm. A bicentennial quarter that had traveled in his breast pocket through 2 deployments. So when he discovered that 2012 penny in the glove box, it wasn't just its condition that struck him, it was the story it hinted at. How did such a flawless coin end up in a grimy pouch beneath expired registration cards? Who had spent it without a second glance? Had it sat in a cashier's drawer at a gas station, overlooked 1,000 times, he knew enough about minting processes to recognize the significance of what he was seeing. The United States Mint had adopted the shield design just 2 years earlier, replacing the long-standing Lincoln Memorial reverse. The 2012 cent was one of the early members of this new generation. Yet, even with modern minting technology, mistakes still slip through. Tiny rebellions of imperfection in a system built for precision. Elias's magnifying glass revealed more than double letters. The lines along Lincoln's tie showed signs of doubling too soft, subtle, but there. The corners of the eye socket, the bottom of the jaw, evidence of a secondary image overlaid atop the first. This wasn't post-mint damage. It was born this way. A flaw at the moment of creation. He spent the next 3 nights reviewing every numismatic journal entry he could find. He dug through archived posts on coin forums, scrolled through thousands of images in digital catalogs. The deeper he went, the more certain he became, this wasn't just uncommon. It was unprecedented. He emailed a few experts anonymously, using a throwaway email address. Attached high-resolution scans. Asked careful questions. Most responses were cautious. Some brushed it off. But a few hinted at something more. Send this in immediately, one expert wrote. If this is what it looks like, you've got something historic. When the coin came back graded MS69RD, Elias just stared at the slab under his workbench light for hours. The red luster glowed like it had its own heat. The edges were razor sharp. Not a blemish in sight. 1 point away from a perfect MS70, and that point only mattered to a microscope. Word spread faster than he expected. A write-up on a numismatic blog sent collectors into a frenzy. Another forum picked it up. Within a week, the coin had become the subject of video reviews, TikTok theories, and Reddit debates. Speculation buzzed. Could this be the rarest known modern penny? How did the mint miss this? Are there more out there? For Elias, the coin was no longer just an object. It was a quiet kind of fame he never asked for. Interview requests came. Offers climbed. Some dealers offered trade-ups, multiple 6-figure coins in exchange. But Elias held firm. He didn't want a collection of someone else's dreams. He wanted this coin to go where it would be honored. The collector from New York approached him differently. She wasn't flashy. She didn't lead with money. She led with reverence. Coins are our history in miniature, she said. Each one tells us who we were when it was struck. This one tells us that even now, perfection slips, and that's worth remembering. They met halfway, in Dallas, at a numismatic event. Elias brought the coin in a padded, hand-stitched leather pouch he'd made himself. He held it for one final minute before releasing it to the collector. She held it with both hands like a relic. They both nodded. Nothing else needed to be said. The 2012 USA 1-cent penny, preserved in MS69RD with a rare and previously undocumented double die obverse, sold $4.90000. Because sometimes, in a world obsessed with shiny distractions and loud headlines, a single, quiet penny can echo louder than gold. All it takes is someone patient enough to listen.